What's going on, everybody? This is Mark with Hyndzyte, and I wanted to do this video ever since I got back from the Quad Cities car show, and lots been going on, mainly that I got laid off. So anyway, this is the setup that we had on the way home. So this is the Mopar distributor. This is my now a backup distributor, and I want to talk a little bit about that as well, and why I got into such a pickle. So Cam showed this before, where you have the, if we're gonna do a GM HEI module coil to a spark plug tester. And if I hook this up, I have 12 volts from basically the battery from the Barracuda. And I provide 12 volts. All right, so I close the garage door so that you can see. So this is, the standard, well, not standard, but the GM HEI conversion using, the GM HEI and then everything else, so that you don't have to use this. And in my Barracuda, I had one, but I went a different route when I did this engine in the Fury, and I'm going to talk about that now. Okay, so disconnected power so that I'm not burning anything up. But this is what I had in the car, and this is an Edelbrock ready to run distributor. So from the wires from the distributor, you just go straight to the coil, and that's it. Meaning that the brains, the control module, is inside the distributor. And while that's very cool, the problem that I had, I've made it through, I've gone thousands of miles with this setup, and this diode just literally fell out. It was sitting inside the distributor housing, and was just, the vibration had caused it to release, is the only thing I can think of, and it fell out. So this is kind of surprised me, right? Because I've driven this for a long time. I've had it maybe 7-8 years, and I was originally thinking it was something else besides spark, but ultimately this is what failed. Now, I just want to get your opinion, because the problem that I see with this, this is like a $300 unit, and when it fails, because it wouldn't have been a big deal if I was, just going to local car shows or just driving it around town. But when you want to drive thousands of miles, is this, like, what would a backup plan be for this besides converting it to like a GM HEI? I'll be honest, I had no problems with this distributor. So when I left for Quad Cities, it wasn't even on my mind that I needed to have a spare. And then things just kind of escalated to, oh dang, I have this one-off system where, I could get a factory one in a day, but this is a little harder to source. So it is occurring to me that, these changing the cars to be more technological setups, you could see more, you can adjust your timing, you can do this, you can do that. I've came to the realization that you still need to have an option to convert it back when you're really when something fails. That you can't just, I mean, I guess I could have bought another one of these for $350 and had it as a spare. Same kind of concern with the Holley Sniper. I've seen or read forums where people have had problems with their sniper, and right now this is set up for a Tanks Inc. in-tank fuel pump for 50 psi. So I couldn't even go to a carburetor unless I got a separate pressure regulator, which I think is what I'm going to do just in case, and have that pressure regulator be able to go down to 5 psi and then have a return so that most of the fuel is going to go back into the tank. And if I really had a problem, say I'm on Hot Rod Power Tour and the Holley Sniper fails, because it's 7-8 years old too, maybe I could source another Holley. I guess they're a little more popular, the Snipers, but I don't know. That's another story. But so I just wanted to get your opinion on, is it better to have the traditional type of setup over the one that's super easy to install and you just need to hook up 2 wires and blah, blah, blah. It's expensive. And when it fails, what do you do? So the what do you do part is what we tried to do in Quad Cities. And, we knew this diode had broke off. We couldn't source a Pertronix system that would work with a Mopar setup. The Mopars have this type of a sensor that goes on the side, and then there's these fins that spin around and let it know when to provide signal. We ended up going with this, trying out this Pertronix. This is for a GM, and I could get this at the show because it's not Mopar. And we disassembled this. This is where the fins used to be. Justin ground those off. But this has a setup where the magnets sit along the top side, and then they cross over this sending unit to let it know, sensor to let it know when to send signal. Similar to the other setup, but it's Pertronix. So we couldn't come up with an idea why this wouldn't work. And we spent Friday night, several hours. Justin helped me grinded these off while I was working on setting this up. We were within spec between here and here when everything's together. I'll have to find the paperwork on that, but we were within spec. The only thing we can think of that didn't work was, if this, as you can see, is a little bit further in than where the magnets are, and we're wondering if this was just in the wrong place for it to make contact, or is something wrong here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play around with this. I just am really curious if this would have ever worked. And if it does, then that's something I'll have to put in the memory bank as an option for some of these, where if you can just kind of figure out a way to get a Pertronix or something like that to work, you can use your old broken Edelbrock Ready to Run distributor with the Pertronix system. So I validated that my HEI setup works. So now I'm going to see if I can get this to work. Okay, so I did a little research, not necessarily on a similar test, but just to test that the Pertronix unit is working. And I think I found a good test. It's not a perfect setup, but first things first was to ground the Pertronix box to, have the case itself be grounded. So I grounded right here. This goes to the negative of the battery so that I guarantee that this is grounded. And one thing I did notice is that there's these little plastic pieces. I mean, yes, there's a bolt that goes through it, so that should be grounding it to the housing, but I don't know, something to think about. And then I took positive to the positive on the battery, and then I have a light switch, test light, sorry, and I take the negative of the Pertronix unit to one end of the test light, and then this goes around and connects to the power. So let me hook up the power and we'll test. Okay, so I have to be a little careful of the space between here, but when I rotate it, I can get some of them to fire. And the noise you're hearing is the springed timing advance. So this tells me, A, that it's working, that the Pertronix is taking a signal, but the alignment may not be great because this thing should be firing. And I mean, it's not an exact science, right? But I mean, you can see. So I need to next work on the spacing. I think it's supposed to be, not even sure what it is, between 10 and 60, but I don't know what measurement. So this at least tells me that the Pertronix unit is working. So I'm gonna take it further, see if I can get it to generate some spark and get the alignment better so that it's firing on all points. Okay, so as you can see, I made a notch rather than a hole and then trimmed this back piece so that this has some play in it so it can move in and out and be adjusted a little better. And I'm hoping that's going to give it a more consistent timing. Okay, so I got it hooked back up and I have it hooked to my drill. I believe the Mopar goes counterclockwise, so that would be the other way. But I hooked it up to my drill so that I can spin it. And you can see it's flickering at a consistent rate. It has a slight gap, so it's not rubbing. So this should work. I would think that this is, a nice consistent spark or signal for spark. Okay, so I have this hooked to a traditional coil, mainly because these wires had to go. I didn't want to change the connectors on them. I got this just the way it was. I've got it grounded to the distributor. I got power on the power side. I've got the Pertronix directly onto the positive, red on positive, and black on negative. So let me turn the lights out, but yeah, you might be able to see it anyway. When it spins quickly, it seems like it's consistent, but when it's really slow, I don't know if there's something, it's firing. So I think this proves that this would have worked, or could have worked. Might have ran like crap, I don't know. But it just goes to show you that sometimes, when all else fails, you can just think outside the box. I mean, it makes sense that these distributors for different models are, closely similar parts, I guess. As you can see, I moved this more to the outside, so it hits a lot better. So there you go. Yes, I could put this in the car and make sure it runs, but I got the timing set pretty good with the original distributor, or with the new distributor in there. Looks just like that one. I don't want to mess with it. It's running good, and I'd have to go through that all over again. So yeah, let me know what you think. I mean, again, this goes back to, is it the best idea to go with the new electronic stuff on these cars for long-term trips when parts stores don't generally keep them, especially for Mopars, in stock? At this point, I feel confident that with this backup and the HEI that you can pretty much get anywhere. If not, you have to drive a little bit, but it's somewhere, someone's got them. They're that common, right? So, coils are going to be there. HEIs, if I have a spare distributor, I should be good from an ignition perspective. I wasn't before. I thought I was fine, but sometimes the expensive electronics fail, and then you're on the side of the highway trying to scramble for parts. Anyway, I'll cut this here. Thank you guys for watching. Let me know what you think. Give me feedback. Was this obvious? I didn't think so. I thought this was a pretty neat idea of using a GM Pertronix 91181 and then disassembling the Edelbrock and hacking it up. No denying that. But it does generate spark. Okay, so I put everything back together and I hooked it up and it didn't work. And I thought about it. The only difference is prior to, I had the ground from the battery on one of these terminals. So I took it back apart, hooked up my negative, and it started working. So ultimately, that was the reason why we did not get any spark that Friday night. This Pertronix is not grounding on the distributor. It does have screws that go through metal to metal, but something is not letting it ground. It needs to be grounded better. So it doesn't change anything, but if you are in the unfortunate situation where you are trying to modify this, number one, I'm sorry, because this is no fun. And number two, make sure you have this base plate grounded. It's no different than the ground on the HEI. So it has to have a definite ground, no question, especially in this situation. It does have a bolt, so you would think metal would be touching metal, but there is something no bueno about this. So anyway, I just wanted to throw that in there.